Remember when Singapore was essentially kicked out of Malaysia in 1965 and had to forcefully gain independence on its own? Well, what if Singapore and Malaysia joined forces and became one country? Now, don't get me wrong, Singapore is indeed a high-income economy doing pretty well. But let's embrace this fantasy for a minute and think about the good their remarriage can bring. In this video, we'll be talking about why Singapore would join back with Malaysia. Before we start with the chapters of this video, do you think this is a good idea? Let us know with some facts. After World War II, Southeast Asia was a hot mess. The colonial powers like Britain were trying to regain control, but the locals were like, nah fam, we'll take it from here. So Britain had to let go of its colonies, including the Federation of Malaya, Singapore, Sarawak, and North Borneo. In 1963, these territories decided to form a new country called Malaysia. Except for Brunei, who was like, I'm good, thanks. Singapore joined Malaysia because it wanted access to bigger markets and a fresh start without the Brits breathing down its neck. But just 2 years later, things went south. The reason? Politics. Malaysia was ruled by a coalition of right-wing parties called the Malaysian Solidarity Convention, or MSC, led by Tunku Abdul Rahman. These guys were all about favoring the ethnic Malays, which didn't sit well with the Multi-Ethnic People's Action Party, or PAP, in Singapore, whose leader was the legendary Lee Kuan Yew. The PAP ran in the 1964 federal elections against the MSC, promising to end racial discrimination. This scared the bejesus out of the MSC because a significant chunk of the Malaysian population was Chinese, and they could potentially vote the MSC out of power. So Tunku Abdul Rahman came up with the brilliant plan to kick Singapore out. After months of heated discussions and race riots in Singapore, that's what they did. On August 9, 1965, the Singaporean representatives reluctantly declared independence. Singapore's policy wizards made some masterful moves that allowed their little red dot to sprint ahead economically, leaving Big Brother Malaysia eating its dust. While both nations started on relatively even footing post-separation, Singapore went full throttle in embracing globalization's fast lane. First up, the Singapore crew rolled out the red carpet for businesses with free market capitalist policies that had foreign investors salivating. Its trade doors flew wider than an elephant's yawn, absolutely dwarfing perfectionist Malaysia's narrow peephole approach. Throw in some rampant cronyism across racial lines there, with Malays frequently the reluctant fronts, and you get a recipe for stunted growth. But what really turbocharged Singapore's surge was its sparkly low corruption and brilliant legal system, a safe harbor for global capital. In cheeky contrast, Malaysia allowed its graceful corruption pandemic to infect every nook. From UMNO party elections being vote-buying palooza, creating UMNO putras, to graft mercilessly plaguing even traffic cops. Using Islam as a deflector shield to duck accountability was the cherry on top. While Singapore invested heavily in churning out highly skilled talent factories, Malaysia's academics hit the snooze button. Thanks to abusing affirmative action, a culture of entitled hayseeds took root among Malays, sapping any hunger for educational sustenance. And talk about tough love. When Singapore's firms flailed, it showed them the exit without tears. Meanwhile, Malaysia's state behemoths like Petronas played eternal nanny, doling out bailouts like participation trophies to its flop kiddos. Way to kill any impetus for economic self-reliance. The total collapse of minority support for Malaysia's ruling coalition lit up the biggest blinking warning signs. As if the Chinese and Indian voters abandoning ship like rats to the MCA and MIC parties didn't scream democratic crisis loudly enough. Only the advent of a spunky new generation of multiracial opposition heroes like Lim Guan Eng and Hannah Yeoh jolted serious reform conversations. Their ability to rally a rainbow coalition was the ultimate shame-squashing for the corrupt old guard. Malaysia's rent-seeking stupor, perfectionist habits, and tolerance for mediocrity steadily transformed it into a severely underachieving couch potato. No wonder the two nations' economic disparity screams like a handed-down bag of bagpipes. While the idea of Singapore and Malaysia reuniting sounds like a total disaster waiting to happen, the potential economic benefits of reunification between Singapore and Malaysia are quite compelling, to say the least. According to data from the World Bank, in 2021, Singapore had a GDP of $397 billion, while Malaysia's GDP stood at $373 billion. Combined, their GDP would be around $770 billion. That's enough to make any economist's calculator overheat. Singapore's expertise in finance, technology, and services, coupled with Malaysia's strengths in manufacturing, agriculture, and natural resources, could create a formidable economic force. With a combined population of over 33 million, a reunited Singapore would yield enough negotiation clout to bully even the most stubborn of trade partners into submission. A larger market and stronger bargaining power would enable them to secure more favorable trade agreements, benefiting both nations. But why stop there? This unified nation could attract more foreign direct investment, or FDI. A larger market size, combined with a diversified economy and strategic location, would make the reunited Singapore-Malaysia an attractive destination for multinational corporations seeking to expand their presence in Southeast Asia. Then we have the urban planners and their grand visions of Singapore's compact cities blending seamlessly with Malaysia's wide open spaces. Singapore's land scarcity and housing affordability challenges could be alleviated by tapping into Malaysia's vast land resources, while Malaysia could benefit from Singapore's advanced infrastructure and efficient public services. It's essentially a win-win situation, like getting the best of both worlds, the city life and the countryside, all in one package. And let's not forget the educational pundits, gushing about how each nation can fill the other's academic gaps. Apparently, this reunion is a scholastic panacea that will mint a generation of Renaissance geniuses. One major benefit of reunification would be Singapore and Malaysia's shared cultural heritage and diversity. The combination of Malay, Chinese, Indian, and other ethnic influences in both countries may promote better social cohesiveness, tolerance, and understanding within a single nation. Although, one could argue that this is painting a rather idealistic picture here. After all, getting different cultures to coexist harmoniously is like trying to get cats and dogs to cuddle up together. Theoretically possible, but in practice, you'll most likely end up with a lot of hissing, barking, and ruined furniture. Basically, Singapore and Malaysia can complement each other's strengths like a well-oiled machine. Singapore's expertise in finance, technology, services, advanced infrastructure, and world-class education system could benefit Malaysia like a sturdy engine powering progress. But such a union would undoubtedly also face significant challenges and complexities that would need to be carefully navigated. In the long run, any decision on reunion would need to be made after careful consideration of all relevant factors, including potential dangers and challenges, potential benefits, and a smooth transition. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content.